Hello and welcome to the Wednesday check-in presented by the Gokhstein News Network. I am your host, Landy, and today is January 7th, 2026. And we're looking at Bitcoin to start today here on the daily. As this is just a check-in, we're going to take a pretty quick look at price action today. Not too much out of the ordinary based on what we talked about on Monday, which was, if we didn't trade above the highs to actually go in and test the point of control overhead at 96, very highly likely that things were going to head back down. And if they did, what should we be looking for? Well, realistically, a higher low as it relates to the last complex low side structure is what we're looking for, right? And that's going to be the close open around 87,000 to the actual swing low of this at 86,350, 86K, depending on your chart. Of course, that being the weekly. And really the bias breaker is going to be anywhere below the 90,000, 90,500 area to $89,000, kind of that area that has acted as an inflection point within this wider weekly structure between 93.5 and 86. And realistically, this is still like right in the range, to be honest with you, for kind of where Bitcoin has been trading. And I noted that while it is a positive thing that the daily did get a close above the weekly here at 93.5, without closes above that 94,640, that 94 to 96 rather, being the main overhead resistance that Bitcoin's going to have to deal with. Well, that remains intact overhead. If price does fall back, just watch the top side swings here, somewhere around 90,000 to that 90,500 area to 89. If we see 89 dropped, that is going to be an indication that we're very highly likely going to see the lows being tested or somewhere around there. So any closes, even in the lower term timeframes below 89, into the mid 88s, definitely keep a close eye on. If it's not quickly recovered, well, we're likely going to be testing those lows of the higher low consolidation down there. Again, nothing too crazy back to the upside. I know it's like all the same areas, been talking about it for weeks and weeks and weeks. But above 96, you can go look 96 to 98, the bottom side of this weekly structure overhead. Above there, we can entertain trips into that weekly structure between 98 and 101. Now, of course, I showed the weeklies on Monday, so you can reference that if you need to. Above there, even if we do see lower term timeframes swinging and trading above 101, and that's kind of where the rubber hits the road, beware of moves into 102.5 to 103.5, 103,650. And of course, this is a very big weekly structure with many weekly structures inside of it, including the high side structure from all of the price action over here around the 108, 109. But realistically, what do we need to see the bulls recover if they can reclaim this 98 to 101 weekly? Well, get back inside of this 102, get above the 1272, of course, where we had this perfect pinpoint of a low post October 10th after the rejection at 116, 118 up here. But realistically, inside of this wider weekly between 102.5 and 112, we have kind of the inflection point in this area. And this was the higher low structure off of the daily higher low consolidation before the new highs, post 112 breakout. Well, this is exactly where Bitcoin came back to reclaim and test and then set a weekly higher low. Bitcoin tried to hold this up on the daily, lost it, went down to the fib number there at 1272, and then rejected, got those two daily rejections at that 116 to 118. But realistically, reclaiming 107 to 108 is going to be a bias breaker for a lot of bears. And we'd see really heavy short covering into 112 likely. And then we kind of take it from there if that were to occur. But again, locally for where Bitcoin is at, understand that bulls need to hold up around that 89 to 90 range. And if you start to see 90,500, we're probably either going to be testing down further. And of course, that's where yesterday's low came in. We're either going to be testing down further into that 90 to 89, or we already have, right? And anywhere below there, just keep an eye on it, because then the low side structure is back in play. And then we're looking 86 to essentially 83.5, 84. This, the swing low of the candles that set the actual low down here at 84.6, 84, 84.7 area. Of course, anywhere below there, we're looking for trips to 80 to 78 initially, and then kind of take it from there. Again, I do think that the weekly is setting up for a bounce, whether it comes from right here, right now, or if it does end up coming from lower, then, so be it. But weekly is definitely primed for some sort of a bounce on the weekly time frame. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to come right from here, although the daily holding up in the stronger half of the weeklies in this zone of interest would be preferred for the bulls. And in this case, when looking at the bands are very telling. Bitcoin did come back to the upper first standard deviation. And again, bias breaker is going to be right around that 89 to 90. That is where the basis band is on the daily. Otherwise, we're taking a trip to that lower first to test that consolidation higher low structure down there. So, keep a close eye on it for the rest of this week. Obviously, we'll follow up with this on Friday for the Friday wrap up, but nothing really has changed that much since Monday. And we did get, an increase in volatility, but we haven't seen like a true breakout to 96 and above is really where that's going to occur. So if you're looking for a breakout to the top side, an expansion on the daily here, we're looking for closes above 96 to really get that rolling into that 98 to 101, and maybe even up to that 102.5 and above to 103.5. And then kind of take it from there. Otherwise, mean reversion is in play on any closes. If we haven't already seen a spike down towards that 89 to 90 by the basis, closes below the upper first would do it, in my opinion. And still, it's not inherently bearish. But if it does lose that higher low consolidation, then it would be. Let's go ahead and take a look at a few other things. Let's look at RSI here. Yep, right at the edge of the bullish control zone. Midline is still going to be right around 90. So, it does tick up day over day. So it was like 88.5, I believe. And then moved up to 89 yesterday, and today it's 90. So it's chasing in terms of where the midline is for RSI. Pretty bulk standard stuff. And then the edge of the bearish control zone is going to be right around 85, 84,959. So just right around 85. So again, that 84 to 86, 83.5 to 86. And that's really predicated on Bitcoin losing around 86 is where we would see the RSI enter the edge of the bearish control zone. We do have a Stoke cross to the downside. Again, this is not that concerning to me right now. This is more of a counter trend signal at the moment. And the only way that this really becomes something actionable is if we saw, a higher low to a lower high, or Bitcoin puts in this high here as it has, and then starts to head down and take out that consolidation higher low structure. So nothing too crazy there. Let's go ahead and check on a few other things. We can go over to commodities. Everybody loves commodities lately, right? Many that didn't want to listen to myself and others for years and years and years, in that big consolidation, then threatened to break out off of the lows in 22. Well, paying attention now, huh? Right around the highs, as it turns out. It's always around the highs when people want to pay attention, right? In this case, there is the possibility of we got a structure, a nice uptrending structure, and then we did get a higher low. Technically, this is a higher low still, but there is the threat of a lower high coming in. Man, I didn't even do that much talking today. Where would that come in? Technically speaking, on closes below 446, 4,446, sorry. And that's where things get interesting, but realistically, any closes below 4,423 in this case would set a lower high. Then look right back to the basis, which is right here, kind of in the midst of the actual high side structure almost perfectly there. But realistically, looking at the 43.55 to 43.81 here, if that is dropped, I'd be looking right back to the low side structure by the lower first, somewhere around the 42.75 area to the 4,300 area, around that lower first is kind of fair game. If we do see the basis band breakdown, of course, that would be losing specifically the close, which is coming in at 43.55. So if we did lose that, I'd be looking right to this low. Any further than that, lower second standard deviations fair game, but somewhere around 42.50 down to 4,200 would be fair game. And then we start looking to, it's right around 4,200, but essentially start looking towards this low in this 272 around 41.60. If that is lost, we have some precedence in this area for right around 4,200 between the highs and the lows here. If it's lost, 4K is probably in the cards for a deeper correction. And when looking at silver, silver has not made a new all-time high, but it did close a new all-time high here for the U.S. markets. And in this case, this is CFDs on silver, so forgive me, but this is what I'm going to use to chart for illustrative purposes. So in this case, 82.75, and for those that don't get why I'm saying that, you can reference some of the comments under some of the spaces that I've been in recently. Look, I'm not going to use the Shanghai index. I don't live in China. So in this case, and yes, I'm aware of what's going on. And in this case, the top side above the upper second, if we did see, silver trading above there, and as long as it's above the upper first, it's fine. And even above $70, it's fine to continue to test the high side structure. But this is pretty much playing out exactly as I had mentioned. Is like try for the highs. What did we end up getting to? Just over 80. We got the close right at 81, or the close open, 81.25. Nice spike up to the 82.75 region. If it can get above 83.75, we can look at 85 to 88, and then 88 to, guess what, the upper third, likely to push to 90. So that would be fair game to the upside. If we do see the upper first lost and we see a high set, now this would be a scenario where we get a lower high swing and a higher high close. If we did see a close below 76.38, then we're looking right back towards that 70 region, anywhere between 72 to 73, down to the actual low at 70, where the basis band is starting to come in. If we did get a close below there, I'd look right to 65 as being one of the key areas, potentially more to the downside towards 60 if that's lost. There is the ability for it to swing 65 and hit some of the structure over here, and in the upper 63 area, 63.70, 63.80 area. But realistically, we lose 70, 65 is probably on deck pretty quickly thereafter. And if that's lost, I'm looking towards the upper second, rising towards around $60, $61 being fair game there. Let's go ahead and look at traditional markets. And I mentioned this. You might recall that I laid out the conditions for SPY. You can use SPX, SPY, whatever. That this weekly never confirmed the double top up here, and that you need to be aware of it continuing to the upside, because we saw that one never confirmed the double top on the weekly, and it was sticking above the upper first. Did make a new high towards 693, almost 694. So 695 to 700 still on deck. What did futures hit? What did we hit with futures? We hit 7,000 on futures. So didn't quite get there for SPY itself, or SPX, but it's still in play. The upper second on the weekly being right around 698, 700. So it is fair game still. Now, I know that it was a bearish candle close, and this is a structure that I've mentioned a few times that the bulls could easily take it over. and they did. And look, this is a scenario where this can continue to grind up and sideways, especially if we are, trading above this last, 680 area, right? This is sideways and up price action. We did get a close open. The open was higher. The close was higher. Yeah. So we got close open, new all-time highs. Ever so slightly, it can continue to charge to the upside and keep grinding it out to the upside. So again, 695 to 700 is in play on the daily here. You can see that reflected on the bands as well over here on the actual the price chart area. Why am I hold on, sorry. Getting a message. So yeah, to the downside, 680's lost. You're looking 675 to 670 down here. But realistically, I'd still give it a chance to keep rolling to the upside. Still nothing too crazy going on here. I don't remember why I was pointing this out, but it was a while back for RSI. Weekly 690 need to see a close to see the upside momentum. Otherwise, it's going to start printing bearish divergences there. So, while there might be a correction coming in, which could line up with some pretty interesting things that might end up happening regarding the government remaining open coming into the end of this month. So keep a close eye on that narrative. I know I've mentioned it a few times, but with the way that things are going in the United States and geopolitically, internationally for the United States right now, I could see the Democrats totally using their power and preventing the government from remaining funded. So definitely worth keeping an eye on, keeping track of. We also saw a spike up and still kind of holding this sideways range. And the bands are even set up in a range for NASDAQ. So in this case, had a new high, but we didn't see any, and I mentioned that we could hit the highs, but it's not until we get above them that we can entertain. So 25,835, what did we get to? 25,813. If we do see a push above there, 25.9 to 26K is on deck by the upper second. Then above there, we can start looking 26.2 to 3. Low needs to hold around the lower first standard deviation on this last higher low on the daily. On a swing basis, around 25.1. And I would say that if you start to see that loss, then things are going to head down towards 25 even and 25.9, 25.8 to 25.9 region by the lower second standard deviation. Anywhere below there, we're looking 24.9, 24.8 to 24.9 by the lower second. Then we're looking mid 24s, being highly likely back to the downside if we do see a break to the downside. Otherwise, much like SPY, it's likely going to be testing more upside. Now, granted, inverted hammers are not what you want to see, whether bullish or bearish, for candlestick patterns. And but realistically, there's nothing too crazy going on here. So I would await just either continuation to the upside or a break below the most recent higher low. We had a big old rejection in Dow today. Obviously, there's some other things that are going on, right? So we had Blackstone dump off because of the Trump administration basically putting restrictions on, or indicating that there should be and will be restrictions on these large corporations buying single-family homes. And then, of course, there's a lot of volatility in defense stocks because of the ways in which the Trump administration wants to see those stocks being handled so that they cannot be exploited by those in power. Interesting, huh? So either way, did we hit our target? I believe we did. I think we kind of annihilated our target, didn't we? Yeah, we got up to 49.5 to actually, 49.5, hit 49.621. There's still room to 49.7, 49.8 if this continues to hold above the upper first standard deviation. And again, just look the trend. Last higher low at 47.850 with the close there coming in at 48,000. So as long as it's trading above there, Sideways and up is the name of the game. Just be aware of structure. A high would be set on closes below 48,923. So just understand that that's where a high would be set. There's likely going to be more bearish divergences. Yeah, I mean, long term doesn't really mean much. So in the context of this particular trend, doesn't mean too much. I would say, basis band is the place to pay attention to if we see a high set in the upper first lost around 48, 840, 850 area, and then especially anywhere below 48.7, then I would be looking right back to the basis around 48.5, 48.4 or so. Anywhere below there, then the last higher low structure is in danger. But for right now, it's still expansion to the upside. Let it play out. And of course, we'll check in on this stuff on Wednesday, or I'm sorry, today's Wednesday, on Friday for the wrap up. Man, all confused today, huh? I did want to check on Dixie real quick. Yeah, so nice little rally in Dixie off of the lows. Of course, this is a long downtrending structure. Yes, we have a swing higher high rejection. We haven't seen a character change in terms of closes. It was a close right on the prior close at 98.72 or so. Need to see it now trading above right around that 98.88, 98.90 to really start pushing further up. Testing around the 99 to 99.5 up here overhead. Maybe we'll start getting into some bond stuff soon. We'll see. Maybe soon. But keep a close eye on Bitcoin. The setup still is edged towards the bullish side. Lower term timeframes as it relates to the daily here, because we do have momentum turning against. There's some bearish divergences that can throw from here as well. I would say keep an eye, if you're going to look at lower term timeframes, I'd look at the 12-hour, right, which has already mean reverted back to the basis band here, and as the 12-hour relates to the 4-hour, right? So the 4-hour here, not ready yet, but if we see a low set, it might start to gear up. But if we don't get continuation past, in this case, right around, 94, 850, 95K, then, we kind of hit literally right in the middle of our 94 to 96 zone that we've been talking about. But if we don't see continuation past, just beware, as the bears could take it over and try to round it to the downside and actually hit some of those downside targets. That is provided it doesn't try to plumb the downside first. And then we'll come back to it. But I'll check in with you, of course, for the wrap up on Friday, and we'll review all of this and what to look for coming into the weekly close on Sunday. And maybe discuss a few other things. Maybe we'll start looking at a few other things in the crypto markets, maybe Ethereum, because I think Ethereum has an interesting setup on the weekly if Bitcoin plays nicely. And kind of go from there. So I hope you all have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. And please like and share this out there. And with all of that being said, Landy out. Take care. Talk to you Friday.